Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we sort through all the latest research, the interesting articles, basically bringing the key insights straight to you. And today, we're taking a plunge into something really fundamental, the human mind, specifically how we make decisions. I mean, it's something people have wondered about forever, right? But how well do we actually understand what's going on inside our own heads? So the core of this deep dive today is this pretty groundbreaking new AI model. It's called Centaur, developed by researchers over at Helmholtz Munich. And apparently it mimics human thinking with, well, striking accuracy.
It really does. Yeah, this research just came out in Nature, and it feels like a significant step. For a long time, studying human decision-making has had these limitations. Certain walls we kept hitting. Centaur seems to be showing us a way past those.
Okay, so let's unpack this then, our mission today.
Yeah.
Figure out what Centaur actually is, how they built it, what it can do, apparently some surprising things, and maybe what it means, for psychology, health research, maybe even just how we see ourselves.
Well, yeah. Historically, psychology has had this persistent challenge. Think about it like this. You had models that were good at explaining maybe why people think a certain way. Or you had other models that were decent at predicting what people might do. But getting both together comprehensively, that was the real sticking point. It left this gap. We weren't quite capturing the full picture of human thought.
Right. It sounds like having, half the puzzle pieces for ages. You could see bits, but not the whole dynamic. What was the main blockage there? Why was it so hard to connect explaining and predicting?
The main hurdle was really building models that were, let's say, transparent enough to show the why behind a decision, but also powerful enough to actually predict that decision accurately across lots of different situations. Getting that blend, that insight and foresight, it's been really elusive.
And Centaur, this is where Centaur comes in, right? It's supposed to tackle that exact problem.
That's exactly it. The core innovation here, what makes Centaur different, is that it bridges those two domains, what we call interpretable theories, the why, and predictive power, the what. So it doesn't just guess the decision, it can also sort of indicate why it's making that prediction.
Yeah.
And that means it can show where older psychological models might be missing something, maybe even suggest how to improve them. The researchers behind it, Dr. Marcel Binz, he's the lead author, and Dr. Eric Schultz, the institute director, they're based at the Institute for Human-Centered AI at Helmholtz Munich.
Okay, that's a really interesting mix of abilities, bridging theory and prediction. But how did it learn to do that? This is where it gets really interesting for me. Did they just feed it psychology textbooks?
Not textbooks now,
Yeah.
but something maybe even more complex. They built a specific data set just for this. It's called Psych 101, and it's massive. We're talking over 10 million individual decisions.
Million?
Yep. From more than 60,000 participants across 160 different psychological experiments. And the range of behaviors covered is huge. Risk-taking, how we learn from rewards or punishments, even complex things like moral dilemmas. But here's the crucial part. The researchers put in incredible manual effort. They processed and standardized all this data themselves, making sure a language model could actually understand it, could read the descriptions of the experiments. That standardization makes Psych 101 really unique. It wasn't just dumping raw data.
10 million decisions, 160 experiments. Okay, that is a gold mine of human behavior data. So what did Centaur actually learn from all that? What can it do now? You mentioned surprising capabilities.
Yeah, they are pretty astonishing. What Centaur seems to have learned is how to anticipate human responses. Not just in situations it's seen before, but in totally new ones, too. It adapts.
Even brand new scenarios.
It recognizes patterns in how people make decisions. It adjusts to new contexts pretty easily. And it can even estimate things like reaction times with quite a bit of detail.
Reaction times, too. Okay, that's impressive.
It is. Marcel Binz, the lead author, he describes Centaur as being like a virtual laboratory for human behavior. Meaning you can describe almost any situation in natural language, and it can try to predict the human response.
A virtual laboratory. That paints quite a picture. It sounds incredibly powerful. So, okay, if it can do all that, what does this actually mean for us? What are the practical implications here?
Oh, the potential applications are really broad. I mean, for starters, you can use it to look back at classic psychology experiments, analyze them in a new way, maybe find insights we missed before.
Okay.
But moving forward, it could simulate individual decision-making in, say, clinical settings. Imagine trying to understand the decision processes of someone dealing with depression or perhaps an anxiety disorder. How might their choices differ? Why?
That could be huge for mental health understanding.
Yeah. Exactly. It opens up new angles for health research generally. Yeah. understanding how different conditions affect decision-making. And it's not just psychology or medicine. Think about environmental science, how people make decisions about conservation, maybe, or social sciences. And the plan is to make it even better. They want to expand Psych 101 to include demographic data, psychological characteristics. That'll add more layers.
That is fascinating, especially the clinical side. But, it immediately brings up the question of ethics. When you have an AI mimicking human thought this closely, how do you ensure it's developed and used responsibly?
That's a critical point, and the researchers are very focused on it. They stress the need for these systems to be transparent and controllable. They're looking at ways to do that, like maybe using open models you can host locally, so you have full control over the data sovereignty.
Okay.
And it's actually quite significant, I think, that this is happening at Helmholtz Munich. That's a public research institution, not a big tech company.
Right.
That public environment gives them a certain freedom to focus on these fundamental questions about cognition, to really combine the AI work with deep psychological theory, and importantly, with a strong ethical commitment. That's not always the top priority in, say, a purely commercial setting.
That makes sense. The environment matters for responsible development. So they've built this incredible tool. They're thinking about the ethics. What's next for Centaur? Where do they go from here?
Well, the next big step is to look inside Centaur, essentially, to kind of peek under the hood. They want to figure out which specific computational patterns, like within the AI's processes, correspond to particular ways humans make decisions.
So mapping the AI's thinking to human thinking patterns.
Exactly. The ultimate aim there is to use that understanding to infer how people actually process information, or maybe how decision strategies differ, between healthy people and people with certain mental health conditions. It's about using the AI not just to predict, but to truly illuminate the human mind's workings.
So really, at its heart, Centaur seems to be this revolutionary tool. It gives us a way to both explain and predict human behavior, offering these potentially profound, data-driven insights into how our minds work, almost like seeing the underlying code of our choices.
Absolutely. And the researchers themselves, they put it quite plainly. These models have the potential to fundamentally deepen our understanding of human cognition, provided we use them responsibly. That last part is key, of course.
It really is. So it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If an AI can now model and predict something as complex as human decision-making with this kind of accuracy, what does that tell us? What does this new understanding reveal about the maybe universal patterns that guide our own thoughts, our actions? And could that fundamentally change how we see ourselves? Lots to think about there. What stands out most to you from all this?